Okay. Let's try to record. Best light, best light, best light. Okay.
What a night. Take one, take two.
We're going live.
We're going live? Okay.
Hi.
With or without glasses? Tell me.
Without, I can see your eyes, but
Okay.
I can't read without my glasses. I can't see a thing.
Okay.
I think we're live. I just think we're live. We are live. Oh my God, what a headache.
People hearing all these statements of vanity.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely. But that's okay. It's all natural. It's good. And we are certainly live. So I'm, I'm just sharing it so that people can see us right now.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience tonight. I really can't thank you enough. Oh my God, we've never started this late, but hopefully you can tune in now and enjoy your evening with the Caribbean Edge and Dr. Amina and Auntie Sophie from the Caribbean Edge Kids. So thank you for bearing with us tonight. I don't know what happened, but Zoom wouldn't connect to Facebook, so it's been a mess, but we're glad you're here anyway. So welcome, Dr. Amina, all the way from Jamaica.
Wow, that furthest part of the earth.
Tried. So we're so glad we at least have you on because you are an amazing storyteller. And it is truly an honor and privilege for Sophie and myself to have you on the Caribbean Edge. My name is Dawn Wilson, if you're tuning in for the first time, and I'm your host tonight for these two beautiful and amazing storytellers.
Oh.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for demonstrating the kind of spirit we all need to have in these times, because you refuse to surrender. And that is so important, that we refuse to surrender to all the forces of darkness that come under the cover of COVID. So bless you.
So let's do some introductions here. Dr. Amina, tell us about yourself and how you got involved in storytelling.
You know, when I ask my students to tell me about themselves, I say, and I don't want to know your name or your height or your age or your vital statistics. And then we realize how little we know ourselves. So I am the child of Pearl and Johnny, two wonderful people who came from the country. My father was from Manchester and my mother was from a place called Mount Zion. So when I leave Kingston to visit my cousins, I hear Marcia Griffith singing in my head, stepping out of Babylon into Mount Zion. And as the product of those two people, I've learned many lessons along the way. And one of them is that head come before book, because we tend to underrate people who are raised in the country. And as an educator, I know that when we say we're revising the curriculum, we spend a year assessing it. We spend another year deciding what need to be revised. Then we spend a year doing the revision. Then we spend a year testing. So by the time we come to implementation, the curriculum owl. And there would have been things that we would have gathered along the way. So I'm a person who believes that head come before book. I'm a person who also believes very strongly in what the South Africans call IKS, Indigenous Knowledge Systems, what we know because of the way we interface with the world around us. And what the Yorubas in Nigeria call knowledge, you don't need no data to prove it. It is not data driven. You just know it because you know it. Like when Sophia Granny tell her, say, Miss Spirit tell me.
Yes.
We just know it. We just know it. And so I am a person who refused to surrender, that when we come into this world, we come like Anansi's child. You see, Anansi did have all kinds of names prepared for his children. And when he went to name one of them, the child said, hold on, I've brought my own name. And that is a metaphor for beyond my name. Beyond my name, I've brought a purpose. And therefore, within that purpose, the supreme being, the creator, whatever we know that being by, has given me the tools to fulfill that purpose. And so I am because I was. I am because something happened before me, and I am the consequences of my being. La, that sound highfalutin, but
Yes.
that's what.
Yes.
That's who I am.
We are going to learn so much from you tonight with your wisdom, and I hope people ask questions tonight of you, because it's such an opportunity to have you and your wisdom as you share with us and as we share with the younger generations as well. And I want to switch over to Auntie Sophie a little bit, who, you know, Sophie and I go back years ago. We met in a beauty pageant for Mr. and Catherine, which is more of a cultural pageant, I think, right after high school, somewhere there. I don't want to give away our age, Sophie. And we met up again in South Florida, actually. It was Mr. Honorable Siaga's, they had a funeral arrangement here for him, memorial. And she said, Don Wilson, and I said, hi, and she reminded me. So it was great running into her again. She now co-hosts the Caribbean Edge Kids, which is the baby of the Caribbean Edge show itself. That's been around for over 2 years. But now we're doing something for the children and telling stories, which she does so well on Sundays at 1 o'clock. So it's such a pleasure that I have the opportunity to talk to you both. So Sophie, apart from entering beauty pageants back in the day, tell us about you.
Well, I am going to correct that, because I was never one to favor the term beauty pageant. I'm a radical Dawn, and I think that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. And I always used to think beauty pageants were just too superficial. So what we entered, my darling, was the Festival Queen contest. It's too long ago, you can't remember, but I remember it like it was yesterday. So it was a Festival Queen, and that we had to give more than just our physique, not just this vital statistic. We were drilled, we had questions, we also had to display talent, okay? So that's why I entered the pageant. It was a cultural pageant and highlighting the inner you, not just the shell. So that's out of the way. My name and Dr. Amina Blackwood-Meeks have to go back to her, don't further give it a name. I know who for picking she be, and I know that she is a product of, but I like to give you my name, and I'm gonna say my name is Sophia Elaine Jackson-Nicholson. All of the names on any of my formal documents. So I was named Sophia by my mother, and I'll tell you quickly, and how names are important to the formation of the child if you own it. My mother, when she was pregnant, Dawn, she is a movie buff to today. And back in the day, she was watching a movie with someone called Sophia Loren. And as she watched with the big, well pregnant, she touched her tummy and she said, if this is a girl, I'm going to call her Sophia. I really love this actress. And can I tell you, my child, I popped out And I popped out with the eyes bright and the forehead big. Let's put it this way. Eyes bright like stadium bulb and forehead, the biggest forehead in the pack. And when I popped out, the nurse said, what a sweet little thing, Jackie. My mother said, no, my name her already. She named Sophia. And when she explained that to me, I grew into the name, understanding that I was named after an actress. And I evolved into that, and I've just embraced that and said, I am the new Sophia. So it's no longer Sophia, as the Jamaicans call me. It's Sophia. So, and it's Elaine.
It's rhyme with Kuya.
Kuya. So there you go. For the Jamaicans now, I can tell them, say Kuya, Sophia. Okay? So there you have it. And of course, I am the product of Blossom and Glenford. But I always say to people, may God pick me, because you can also attest, Amina, the years that we have come through, you're coming from the country and how you have evolved. And it's only through the mercy of God. The mercy of God, how he has kept us to this day, that we are able to share what we had and the blessings we had with others. So may God pick me, and I am the product of Blossom and Glenford Jackson. So now I'm married to Devon Nicholson, so my name Nicholson. But yes, indeed. So this is it, my dear. I am who I am, and I am as I give you. So you see me? I saw me here. This is me. This is me. All right, Miss Dawn. So now you know.
Now I know, and I remember actually singing in that pageant.
You
and
did.
I can't sing, so I hope there are no recordings that exist.
No, and I am going to give you some credit. I'm going to give you some credit, as was displayed tonight, for your resilience, your perseverance, and your relentlessness. I think you told yourself you could do it, and at a tender age, you chose to stand on a stage and sing. Hello, that is bravery to the max. So clearly something was being formed there, my young friend.
Thank you.
I believe she would have learned something from Marcus Garvey, whose birthday was 2 days ago.
2 days ago.
Because people seldom refer to the fact that when Marcus Garvey was 14, he won an all-island elocution competition. That's not the miracle. He had a stutter.
That's right. Can you imagine that?
He had a stutter. But he entered the competition, and throughout the competition, he overcame that stutter.
Isn't that amazing?
So in our DNA is the inscription of all that we are meant to be, and all that we're supposed to overcome.
Yes.
Thank you.
And amen, no man. So yes, amen.
Amen.
So if you're listening from Old School Rules, because this is being live streamed, we want to say welcome to the show, and to the viewers for tuning in and bearing with us tonight. And as you can tell from speaking to these ladies, you can tell why they're storytellers. And I must mention that Sophia's daughter, Brittany, read on the Caribbean Edge Kids last Sunday, and so she's following in her mom's footsteps as well, because she does that as part of her career as well. So storytelling, which we're here to talk about tonight, is so impactful, so cultural, and one of the main reasons that we're doing what we're doing tonight and through the kids show is to encourage and educate our kids, and so that these storytelling that you two do so well, we don't lose it. We don't lose that culture and heritage as the year goes by. We're passing it on and educating our future generations. So thanks for what you do. How did you both get into storytelling? We'll start with Dr. Amina. What were your influences to go down this path?
So you know what happens when babies are born. When Sophia popped out, somebody gave her a name. But before you get a name, the doctor usually slap you and you go, wah! And I believe that when I was slapped, I said, wah! Once upon a time. Because I was raised on storytelling. which is why I keep emphasizing that my parents were peasants from the country. It's a kind of education. It's a kind of upbringing. It's a kind of levity, as the Rasta man would say, which is not honored. My parents were raised in the country where every metaphor, every simile they wanted came from what they saw. So if you don't put on your clothes right, them say your favor hang pan nail. You ever put your clothes pan a nail and see how it look? Your favor hang pan nail. Or if you put too much food on your plate, somebody from the country would say, what a mountain of food. So we honor the way they have learned to express themselves. My parents were great storytellers, and I didn't even know there was a word for it. I thought everybody spoke in anecdotes. As a matter of fact, when I was in second form at that school over there,
Yeah, you know.
yeah, where you learn to talk rather nasally.
Yeah.
Yes. One of my teachers said to me, do you realize you speak anecdotally? Well, I thought I was clever. You see, at that school, before you went there, we had to learn Latin, Miss Sophia. Oh,
Yes.
yes. First, second, and third form, you had to learn Latin. And
Yes.
people wonder how we master the English, because Latin is a gateway. So hear me now, when you say, do you realize you speak anecdotally? Me and my little bright second form self say, well, you know, I love in the Spanish and not having such a good time with the English, but I do not know how to conjugate anecdotally. Well, me one think I was cute. She did not. She didn't think I was cute. But my mother and my father raised us on stories. And the first story I remember, not the first story I was told, but the first one I remember, because it was so to the point, I'm the first of 5. And when you're the firstborn child, everything falls on your shoulder. When you're a girl, let's talk about gender disparity. Double trouble. So when you're the firstborn girl, everything your 2 brothers do and your 2 sisters do, you are responsible. Miss Pearl is going to ask you. When I was either 8 or 9, I learned this wonderful phrase with an attitude. It went, it wasn't my turn. And the first time something went wrong, Miss Pearl asked me, don't whatever she asked me, I take out my phrase with the attitude, it wasn't my turn. And Miss Pearl told me a story. She said, one time, you see, there was a man who had to walk over a little bridge to go to him grung. Well, you know the grung is the farm that is far from your house. And there is a cultural, historical reason for that. Anyway, when him a go him grung early one morning, he saw a piece of stick across the bridge. Well, it wasn't him who put it there, so it wasn't his turn to move it. And he worked all day till darkness fall. And then he forgot about the piece of stick across the bridge that wasn't him put it there. And because it was dark, he also forgot to bend down and walk under it. And then Miss Pearl said, ominously, and today, that man uncle have 1 eye. I am 8 years old. I don't mean to quote him. What that have to do with me? But I grew into an understanding of that story as collective responsibility. Or the little memory gem we learned that say, whatsoever thy hands findeth to do, do it with all thy might. So my mother spoke to us like that all the time. You do something good, you get a story. You go and get a whopping, you get a story. You need to be rewarded, you get a story. But Friday nights were organized storytelling, I call it that now, storytelling, family exchange, intergenerational link up, because them used to make peanut long before peanut come in our box with a label and a brand name. That's right. That's right. And we used to sit around with my parents and help them make them peanut and then pin that cake because sell for the weekend so we can go to school Monday morning. And they were just telling stories. They were telling once upon a time stories. They were telling a Nancy stories. That's when I find out, say, when my mother meet my father, him dazzler eye with him two-tone boot. I bet you don't know nothing about two-tone boot. Yes. And so I grew up on stories, and the way the stories have lived in me have convinced me about their importance as source and resource and infrastructure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just mesmerized. Dawn, you there?
Certainly then, because and I shared this with you both, like I did not grow up with stories. My dad was, you know, he owned a couple buses, so he was always working on the bus, or you know, I remember him just always being busy. And my mom was not there because, as I've shared before, my mom, you know, I was kidnapped and brought to Jamaica. So that was a whole nother story. So I didn't have a mom growing up, and my dad was owned a couple buses. So I didn't have that family time. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, just like a lot of people can relate to having stories and people reading. So I made sure I read to my kids, you know, I was able to break what I call break my cycle, so to speak. So it's so interesting for me now, and I think even for adults, to learn from you both the stories. And that's why it's so fascinating to listen to you both talk about stories and your upbringing and what it did to transform you into who you are today. I think it's beautiful.
And I may join this to Dawn. As I listen to Dr. Amina Blackwood-Meeks, I am there. Oh my God, I'm on the edge of my seat. Now, I wasn't brought up in the country, but my mother was a storyteller. My mother was a storyteller, and I've called her recently. I said, Mother, thank you for what you have done for me in your finite, I would say, wisdom, because she was not one of those you'd consider, what you say, an academia. So my mother, in her finite wisdom, taught us, and again, it was anecdotal, because every time, as Miss Dr. Amina Meeks said, if you were getting in trouble, there was a story. If you were going to be rewarded, there is a story. And I'll quickly share with you, and I've kept the story with me. I remembered fussing about something, and my mother she doesn't subscribe to what you consider spoiled picnic. She had 3 girls, it's 3 of us, and so eventually she became a single mom. Not time for spoiled picnic. And one of us, I think maybe me or my sister, was fussing, and she sat us down and she said, listen, there are times I'm going to have to discipline you, and it's going to be painful, but it is for your good. There was a little girl. She grew up and she had 1 eye. And there again, I heard Dr. Amina Meeks saying something about an eye. She had 1 eye, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? The child had another sister, and she said, Mama, how come my sister have 2 eyes and me have 1? And the mother said to her, you had a pair of scissors. You were playing with it, and I tried to take it, and you wailed, and I didn't want to hear you cry. So I give you back the scissors, and you fall down and took out your eye. No, it made me cry to think of the child suffering with that situation. But my mother was telling us that there are times we're going to hear no, we're going bawl, but it is for our good. So she always gave a story. She also told me, Dr. Amina Meeks, you may not have heard this one, about the spoiled picnic. There was a young man in Jamaica. His mother would never tell him no. Everything he did, and if the teachers complain, is not his fault. He was never wrong. She spoiled him, and she said yes for everything. And one day he finally got into trouble that she couldn't get him out of, and he was taken to prison. When they were going to take him away, he said, may I get my mother for a minute to talk to? And the police called her in, and he pulled her close and said, I'm going to whisper something to my mother. And when she got close, he bit off her ear.
I
And
know that
and
story.
you heard about it.
Yes,
I
yes,
don't
yes.
because she never hear it. But most of the Jamaican children heard this. My mother would say to us when we go out and if something happens, she said,
You
listen, make
nah
sure you're
bite
in,
off
make
my
your now
ears.
come bite off my ears. In other words, and I'm telling you, we'd go out and if something happened, she called us, she said, come here. Where did you go wrong? What did you do? And we'd always try to figure out the situation. So again, she didn't believe in spoiled picnic. She didn't believe that a child should not be disciplined. And as again, in her finite wisdom, she taught us through stories and anecdotes. And I use that to my children today. So I'll tell them and share, oh my goodness, stories are important. Stories are in songs. Stories are in poetry. When you're giving a speech, if you stop and say to your listeners, you know, I remembered, immediately you get your audience because they now want to hear what happened to you. So stories are amazing. And I trust that we continue this tradition of telling stories. And young people, if you're listening, find a way to get into the storytelling and find a way to tap into, if you're from the Caribbean background, tap into that and pass it on. Pass
And
it
we
on.
have to.
Pass it on.
It's a tremendous responsibility. In African societies, in the same way in Jamaica, you will find generation of farmers or generation of singers, and I won't name them, but we know all the generation of singers that we have in Jamaica and throughout the Caribbean. So it is that on the continent, there are generations of storytellers. And in fact, in Ghana, they say when a storyteller dies, we lose an entire library. But the storyteller in that community, in that village, in that setting, would carry thousands, literally, thousands of years of history in their heads. And the time would come when they would pick somebody, pick a young child that had
Pass it
been
on.
listening to the stories and pass on the stories.
Yes.
That way the stories never die.
Yes.
Right. And that's why it's so significant for you both to be on tonight, because I respect you both and I think you have so much to offer to future generations. I think now is the perfect time with COVID-19. I think God is talking to us, the planet is talking to us. The slow down technology has taken over in a lot of ways, but we can also use technology, which we're doing tonight.
Absolutely.
To reach generations, which is what we're doing on Caribbean Edge, kids. And for you guys to explain to us and educate us about the importance of storytelling and why, especially for non-Caribbean people that may watch this show, to say, why is it important? What is it derived from? And I know before we even gained independence, people used to sit around before my time, and your time, just sitting around campfires, sitting on the veranda, listening to Anansi's stories and other stories. And so it's so important to continue. So Dr. Amina Blackwood-Meeks, we're gonna like pick your brain and have you share with us like your knowledge, like where did you get it from to start storytelling? I know some of it is from your parents, but what's your knowledge on the history of storytelling that you would share with the world?
I used to say that, well, I referred to it earlier about all of us bringing our own names.
Mm-hmm.
And before I learned to say it like that, I would say, you know, Bigfoot people must play basketball. Because I have one Bigfoot brother who play basketball, so I'm sure what. Bigfoot people must play basketball. And if you love chat, maybe you should be a storyteller. But that's not how it started. Because when I went to St. Andrew High School, and whatever I say about St. Andrew High School, I would go there again and again and again. And if I had a daughter and I had a million schools to choose from, I would send her to St. Andrew High School again and again and again.
Yes.
But I went to St. Andrew High School shortly after something called the Common Entrance Exam came into being. If common entrance exam never come into being, me couldn't in a St. Andrew High School. I mean, I have the car, and I have the money, and I have the whole heap of other things. So when I went to St. Andrew High School and all the girls in my class were watching television and talking about Elliot Gould and Sinting Ness and the Untouchables, I didn't know what they were talking about. And I wouldn't say that on a Friday night, my parents told us stories. No, there is a way in which this society that benefits from inequities, this society that values you according to the height of your shoes heel and the height of your head wrap. Me throw word now upon the wonderful Miss Sophia out there, so values you by external things, make you feel ashamed of your country, mother and father. And so I wouldn't say that my parents told stories. Now, Sophia, you will remember that at that school now, we have all kinds of competitions in the arts. Inter-house competition in the arts. Well, Miss Dawn, one day I get a piece of wake up, you see? Because guess what happened now? In the elocution competition, you say two pieces. You say an English piece and you say one dialect. Because at that time, we weren't calling it the Jamaican language. And me and one girl who did belong in St. Andrew High School choose the same dialect piece. And them give the girl winnings. I bex. Because in her normal everyday life, she not talk so. So how she come hack it out on the stage and win my something. Of course, at that age, I am not articulating it like this, but this is the way my spirit is feeling, that my culture has been appropriated. And me want it back. Who I am matters. Me want back me something. And so over the years, there has been this awakening in me about the value of this thing that I have not yet been able to give a name. I may start win up storytelling thing now. I may start win up elocution, but as performance pieces, you bow and you say the thing, and when you finish, you put it away. Lo and behold, I am living in Antigua. I lived in Antigua at a point in my life. And I have a children's play group called Child's Play. How original. But I am using theater techniques to build self-esteem. And in doing that, we went on a collection of stories, Anansi stories. And there was this child in the group, Adekunle. Adekunle was 8 years old. He had been raised in Nigeria up to that point in time. His mother was Antiguan, the head of the School of Continuing Studies, and his dad had not yet set foot in the Caribbean. Would you believe that one evening we're sharing stories and Adekunle tell me a story that my father tell me in Jamaica, and my father never got to Nigeria yet. And so I was alive to the fact that we're speaking the same language, not just as words, but as experience, as pedagogy, as culture, as heritage. And I'm alive to, I want to know how this came about. I want to know why there are things in the culture like Moona run till deer catch him, or long run, short catch, or don't kill the goose that lay the golden eggs. Where them things have come from? Only to discover that they are the morals of stories. And sometimes we haven't heard the stories, or sometimes we have forgotten the stories, but we have taken that moral into our being. And so that began my quest to look very seriously at stories and storytelling. And then there is a wonderful gentleman, I think he's watching because he sent me a note earlier to say, are we on or not? Ken Corsby from Guyana, who is a nonagenarian, who is born in 90. And who is one of those persons who are responsible for the fact that we have something called Carifesta in the region. right?
Oh.
Artists who make up nice where nice could be made, and the president of Guyana listened, and Carrie Fester was born. But Ken was living in, when I was a child, Ken Corsby and Mark Matthews went around the region doing what? Telling stories. And they came to St. Andrew High School, and I just remember that I'd never had so much fun in my life. And then somebody say, you know, so them earn a living. I don't know what kind of living they was earning at that time, but they were being paid. So that also is in the mix. Now I am in Antigua, and Ken is living in Barbados, and a group is established called OCAB, the Organization of Caribbean Associations in Barbados. So come out of your little Dominica Association, come out of your little Jamaica Association, and make us all come together to advance this thing we're calling regional integration. How are we going to do it? Through that which is common to all of us, our heritage in storytelling. And the wonderful Mr. Ken Corsby set up the first ever storytelling festival in the region. And Sen come ask me, big university honors graduate, if me could have come tell one story, me skin up my nose, because my mother and my father sent me to good school and good university. And now you're coming to tell me that me can't tell no story. And then Ken, who's so down to earth and so practical, say, but you have 21 little children into a group who you're teaching stories to. You better come tell. You better come tell stories. And then many other experiences like that built on top of it. And now the only thing I want to be called is a storyteller.
Amazing.
It's the most important thing I do. Everything has a story. The fact that an apple fall off of the tree and clap Mr. Newton in our head and him say, what that? Is the story of gravity. Everything, there is a story. And I referred earlier to the storytellers in Africa. And they are the real philosophers. Because in those societies, philosopher is not something you become by being a PhD. And you're a doctor of nothing, one little thing, and think you are so wonderful. The philosophers know everything. History and sociology and religion and spirituality. And that is wrapped up in the storytelling. In fact, in my research, I couldn't find any one word on the continent that means storytelling. That is a colonization. There are several words that mean we're doing something, as Sophia said, with music and song and dance and proverbs and so on. But the word I really like comes out of Nigeria. It's a pataki. And a pataki is a story intended for your spiritual upbringing. How awesome is that? And then I came back to Jamaica, and the head of the drama school at the time, I did a one-woman show. Every 2 years, I do a one-woman show. And I did a one-woman show, and the head of the drama school said to me, come and teach that. And I said, me just learn it. And he said, when you going to finish learn? Me say, me no know. And he said, you will teach it as you learn it. Give thanks. And so I'm always learning. And as I learn, I share. As I learn, I share. Because you don't want to pass, and then you become one of those people who Jan Carew spoke about when he said, the cemeteries of Black people have been whole heap of library where we can't read.
God. I can certainly
relate. Library behind.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you a sad little story there, why what you said is so significant. And I can listen to you all night. We all have a story, and I've shared mine publicly a few times. But one of the things that I said to my dad was, the next time I'm in Jamaica, I really want to know your side of the story, because I wanted to hear his side of the story as an adult versus what I'd heard as a kid, because you're listening differently as an adult. And he passed away, unfortunately, before I made that trip to Jamaica, just shortly after I had that conversation. So it resonates with me when you're speaking about the importance of stories, because it is our culture, it is our heritage, and a lot of us can relate to it in modern times. How many of us capture our parents and our grandparents' stories? And like you said, they're all in the graves because we've not captured them, right?
Yeah.
So we're so blessed with what you both do in sharing stories. And so culturally, we're passing that down, like I said, to the next couple generations. I know Auntie Sophie, Bethlehem Preschool, who's also a sponsor of the show, they're also interested in Auntie Sophie. The kids can't wait for her to come into the schools and meet her as well, just from seeing and interacting with her on the Caribbean Edge Kids show. So Sophie, how did you get into storytelling, and why is it significant to you? And you've obviously passed it on to your daughter.
Right. And here's what's interesting. I am just so floored again listening to Dr. Amina Meeks. Everyone by now would know by my vehement shaking of the head and thumbs up, I went to St. Andrew High as well. But my experience was somewhat different. Yes, thank goodness I got there as a result of the common entrance exam, because like Dr. Amina Meeks, I would not have normally fit in or been able to go, my single mother in the background and all that. But thank goodness for common entrance exam, I was awarded a place at St. Andrew High School, and that has been my alma mater. That has been a treasure to me. I treasured the years of experience there, because for me it was a little different. When I went, I saw more of me. I saw more children that looks like me. So I never felt out of place. And chances are with my personality, I wouldn't have either, because I come into myself and I walk into a room and I own myself. So people may find me intimidating, and I apologize, but this is just me. I popped out of the womb, I told you, with the brightest eyes like stadium bulb and the biggest forehead in the pack. I have no choice, people, but to be that chandelier, okay? So you will hear me before you see me, and when you see me, you will know me. So at St. Andrew High School, I created my own space. And again, I felt I wasn't intimidated. I saw more of me. But here's the kicker. I used to tell them with pride that my mother told me stories. So as I shared with you in the green room, we'll call that a few days ago when we chat, when a teacher did not show up, we didn't have what they call them over here, substitute. The class would then be left, on what would I say, there's no teacher, unmonitored. But I stood up and I said, let me tell you a story. And I told stories during, we call that periods, like the first period, second period, until the bell rang for the next session. So Sophia was the storyteller in my year group. And people would find me lunchtime, and if we were sitting, Sophia, tell me a story, or Sophia, perform for me. And I would perform right there and then wherever I was. So I was not ashamed of that. I embraced it. And the school embraced it too, because yes, we had cultural competitions, inter-house, Red House, Cavell. I was in Cavell against Gartshore, Anderson, and Darling, and Stockhausen, and Dr. Amina Meeks is gonna ask me how I remember all this, but I lived St. Andrew High. I lived it and experienced it and absorbed it, and I felt welcomed. So of course the competitions, and then I must give a shout out to my very dear literature teacher. Her name is Maxine Plummer. She heard of me telling stories. Clearly, maybe she walked into the classroom and hear me carrying on. Maybe she was next to teach. And of course, she invited me to enter what you call the inter-school speech competition, festival time, inter-school. And she gave me 2 pieces to study. Marcus Garvey, a piece called Masters of Your Own Destiny, which again, darling, that became my philosophy for life. Marcus Garvey, I became a Garveyite. And then I did also a piece called Metamorphosis. And I later found the author, I researched and found her. She's at UWI now, Adika, I think her name is. But in any event, I did those pieces, and then of course that exposed me to the stage. And of course at St. Andrew High School, drama was a big thing. I think I was more into drama class than any other classes. The Bobby Gazeys was one of our drama teachers, and we had some really strong influences at St. Andrew High School. So that little hall called our hall that we did our performances, I revered. I walked into that hall. It's a hallowed hall for me because that was where I launched, and Sophia was known at St. Andrew High School. They call me Miss Lou because one year we hosted Miss Lou's 60th birthday. Miss Lou didn't go to St. Andrew High, you know, just so you know. She went to Excelsior. But I thank goodness that there was a young lady at St. Andrew High School, the daughter of a playwright, Marriott, and maybe Dr. Amina might know the Marriott playwright, and his daughter, Lavina Marriott. She asked her dad through his influence to get Miss Lou to come to our school. And we celebrated her 60th birthday. And I performed for Miss Lou. I did a play. And when I was finished, Miss Lou hugged me and she said, "You are one bono nunos little picnic. You're going to reach somewhere." And listen, first time in my life, I got what we call a autograph. I didn't know about autograph. I see people line up with piece of paper. I wonder. So I take the piece of paper and go to her too. And she signed on it, "Bono nunos Edna. All the best, you're going to go places." And I keep that little piece of paper. I couldn't find it the other day. I was looking for it. My mother must have thrown it away. But anyway, so I love Miss Lou, and they called me Miss Lou at St. Andrew High School. So I've been telling stories, my darling. Anybody who knows me, if you come around me, they would say, "Pop story, give me." And as I'm sharing with you, and if I'm talking to you, Dawn, and I start getting confused, hear me now, 10 story now one. Because now I'm changing gears. You have to follow me now, you know. When I'm talking, you have to stay with me because before you know it, I change gears. So to caution you, I'll say 10 story now one, and I give another one. So it has become my life. Storytelling has become my life. And you have now brought it to the fore. Yeah, yes.
The role of Sunday school should not be downplayed either.
As well.
I went to one of those churches where every excuse for a concert. Clap
Yes.
on. And so I learned to perform as well. As we know, many of the Jamaican artists come off of the church stage.
Yes,
in
ma'am.
North America, the gospel singers who transitioned to jazz and so on. So that Sunday school played a very, very important part in my life. I have to say this because the teachers at St. Andrew High School need to be given a great deal of credit. I'm sure
Yes.
From other schools as well.
Yeah.
But I have in my library a book called Mother is Gold, which I never read until I was an adult. But I got it at St. Andrew High School as a prize for citizenship.
Yes.
What is Mother is Gold about? Mother is Gold is about female storytellers from Africa.
Wow.
What did the teachers see in me?
Yes.
Which I didn't know.
Yes.
So we have to give them credit for that as well. And so it also confers a responsibility that when we encounter children or even adults who have not yet seen in themselves what they are the carriers of, we have a responsibility to mark it on their behalf. So it's very important what you're doing with and to and by your daughter. Earlier, Dawn mentioned the business of COVID. We're learning some very important lessons from COVID. You also mentioned the fact of grandparents' stories.
Yes.
So I want to say, yes, there are more stories beside Nancy's stories. There are all kinds of traditional stories. But some of us claim to be historians and we don't know how we mother meet with father. We own personal history we don't know. But we come back to when Columbus sailed the 7 seas and get lost and so on and so forth. And forget that we are part of that continuum. And what COVID has done is to force grandparents and children and parents to be in the same space more often than they had been in the same space. And maybe they don't set out to tell stories, but you know what I have learned? Everything happens when nothing is happening.
Yes.
Yes.
When nothing happened at that time, everything happened.
Yeah.
So here we are in the room, and grandma have to say, You know, say me tired for stay inside. Come and show you how to cook pudding outside.
Yeah.
You know, say we used to call this hella top, hella bottom, hallelujah in a middle.
Yes.
So circumstances have forced us to reconnect with that very important heritage. And now we need to do it deliberately,
Yes.
not by accident, not by having been forced into it.
Which is a platform Dawn has given me by making me now give the stories deliberately on Sundays at 1 o'clock. But I've always been giving it, and that is absolutely amazing. And my grandmother told me stories too, not to keep you, but the song, you did a piece, Dr. Amina, Blackwood-Meeks, that says, river to the bank, Covally.
Yeah.
River to the bank, Covally. And I shared it with my family. I didn't know my sister would cry. Guess why she's crying? She missed Granny. It brought back memories. When she watched it, she said, I don't know why I'm tearing up. Sophia, I am crying. But she remembered the moments we spent with our grandmother. And my grandmother used to sing it, river to the bank, Covally. River to the bank, Covally. And she sang. And I'm just telling you, stories will take you back in time. It will bring you
that is so important. Yes. The memories, Dawn, so important what we remember and how we remember. Because look here now, sometimes I call myself a development specialist. Hallelujah. Because really storytelling is at the service of human development. You see, when I look at the Millennium Development Goals, or now what is being called Sustainable Development Goals, everything in our story. Yes. In fact, a previous executive director of the National Library of Jamaica, I interviewed her for my thesis, and I said to her, what is the value of Anansi's stories to you? And she said, if she had her way, and people tell her, say, she can only keep one set of books in the National Library of Jamaica, she would have keep the Anansi storybooks. You learn about Christmas. You learn about Easter. You learn about wedding. You learn about consequences. You learn about discipline. You learn about going to the river. In so many stories, Anansi goes to the river that people go and get baptized and treat as something sacred. And now which comes up in all the discussions about climate change and protecting the rainforest and keeping the rivers clean. Every single thing we need to know is contained in the stories. Go back to the stories and remember why they were told and who told them. There is nothing that we cannot do.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you reflected on something, Dr. Amina Blackwood-Meeks, and that's about we don't see certain things in ourselves, but our teachers see it. And with the Caribbean Edge Kids show, we had a little boy come on and read. All the kids are awesome. And they're between 5 and 7-year-olds so far that have read for us and sang for us. And this one little boy, after the show, I get such positive feedback on it. This one little boy, I heard he didn't even want to be in school, and he had only been reading for 5 months, and they were going to pull him out of school, everything, and the teachers believed in him along with his parents and convinced them to stay in this particular school, and they would work with him. And now he was able to read for other little kids on the Caribbean Edge. The teacher called me and she says, you have no idea what you did for this little boy by having him on the Caribbean Edge. So the stories that they get to come on and listen to Auntie Sophie tell and share the culture. And for me, trust me, I'm a big kid because I'm like just swallowing in everything you guys are saying because I missed out on all these stories. So I love listening to you both and what you're both doing and sharing for us. Dr. Amina, can you tell us about some of the work that you're doing? Because I know you have your national storytelling.
So we have an organization called Ntukuma, the Storytelling Foundation of Jamaica. So the second part of the name is a dream. Because you know, foundation supposed to have money and give scholarships and do all kinds of things. So that's the vision. Entukuma is the name of a Nancy's firstborn son.
Mm-hmm.
And in the culture, we call him Brother Tukuma.
Brother Tukuman. Mm-hmm.
Right? But in Ghana, he's Entukuma. So we've named the organization Entukuma. Entukuma does many things, and the highlight of what we do is the Storytelling Festival, which has been running since 1998.
Mm.
But it grew and changed. So in the beginning, we called it Celebration. Tell a story in celebration of who you are. And then we had a couple of years when only children told stories. That was awesome. They would line up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and at 4 o'clock, all who not get to tell story, I cry. And at that time, we called it Little Story Fest. So we were just there to guide them. And then in 2012, when we turned 50 as a nation, we wanted to highlight the importance of storytelling to nation building. And so we rebranded and called the festival Anansi Sound Splash.
Mm.
At that time, we passed a resolution that we were going to ask the Governor General to proclaim a National Storytelling Day. And we wanted this proclamation to be read in the year 2014, because 2014 would mark the 100th anniversary of the formation of the UNIA. And as far as I am concerned, Gavi was the greatest cultural worker in the history of the world. And so we wanted, to mark this very important organization that Gavi formed, but we also wanted it proclaimed on November 20. November 20 is the United Nations Universal Children's Day. And we wanted to link the two to give to our children stories as a tangible measure of their right to heritage and culture. Mm-hmm. So the festival lasts for a week. And in that week, we go to colleges and we do workshops, storytelling to teach maths, to teach English, to teach history, to teach language, geography, storytelling for hospitality and entertainment in the tourist industry. So we have different legs of that festival during that week. But we've also established, so the Governor General proclaimed National Storytelling Day, and we're extremely proud of it. We work with the libraries. And on National Storytelling Day, we have 2 storytellers, local and international, because we bring storytellers in through some funding that we receive. And we have 2 storytellers in each of the parish libraries, simultaneously, 9 to 11, telling stories. But storytellers are in every single library, because there are over 800 libraries in Jamaica, school libraries, community libraries, and so on. And so what we did earlier this year or late last year, I forget now, COVID gone with your memory, is to sign with the Jamaica Library Service, not the National Library now, which is the reservoir of our cultural history. The Jamaica Library Service that lends books is to sign with them an MOU for the establishment of storytelling clubs in every single library, and to teach the children how to collect their community histories through stories. All our activities must have a senior citizen, because besides telling traditional stories, we also have a category called the lived experience. Yes. So when we go to St. Anne, for example, and they tell us this never used to be a road, we know why this place named Walker Wood. The place do not name Walker's Wood, as you would have come to believe. It was a wood, a woodland, as we say in Jamaica. And when our foreparents were taking shortcut, and you ask them, so which way you going to walk? Them say, we're going to walk a wood. And the Englishman who thinks you talk, we talk bad, decides say it named Walker's Wood. But nobody don't name Miss Walker or Mr. Walker, we walk a wood. So those kinds of stories, you see, head come before book. Those kinds of stories we collect from our senior citizens, and part of the mission of the storytelling clubs in the libraries is to get the children, to teach them how to collect oral histories and to collect that kind of information which has not yet entered books. And then we have two big discussions every year. One is located in Black History Month. We might shift it. And that discussion could be as a panel, but it could be through stories, or it could be through a performance. And so that discussion last February, was in a presentation called The Calabash to Save the World. Mm-hmm. And what it was a story about a Nancy with a calabash that had everything to save the world. But him walk around in a Jamaica and him give 3 little picnics some of it. And one of them turned out to be Cicely Williams from Westmoreland, who in fact became a doctor, was called the Children's Savior, and developed the cure for kwashiorkor. The other one was Mr. T.P. Lecky, who got tired of how the cows them was mager and how the milk was so watery. And so he developed the Jamaica Hope, the Jamaica Black, and the Jamaica Red. And the third was about Dr. Manley West and Albert Lockhart, who used cannabis, marijuana, to develop the treatment for glaucoma. So that discussion was about Jamaicans as scientists. Mm-hmm. Our children don't think of themselves as being scientists. They think of other people. And we're saying, no. We are scientists too. And we can deliver this message through storytelling. So that's some of the work that we do. Over the years, the festival has had conference presentations. One day is a conference day, and we've collected the documentation about storytelling for community cohesion, for personal growth, for curriculum delivery. And one day, please God, not long from now, we're going to have the money to publish those papers.
Mm-hmm. So if people want to help, how do they reach you to help?
Thank you for asking that question. People who want to help, ntukuma_JA@yahoo.com. We have 2 Facebook pages, the Ntukuma page and a page called Nancy Matters. So there are several ways you can help. Clearly, enterprises such as this always need funding. But also, your activities such as this can give us a voice, can help us to showcase what storytelling can do. We can sit and talk about it, but when people experience it. So there are several levels at which help will be absolutely welcome. There are people in the group who are not storytellers, but they help us to document. They help us to organize events. They help us to market ourselves. So you don't have to be a storyteller to be a member. And yes, you can become a member. We have all levels of membership. Between April and July, we did a project called I Am. We have a project called I Am, the International Nancy Movement. And we did a project called Stories That Heal and Unify. And we collected stories and tailored those stories to healing and unifying in the time of COVID. And wherever we were, in New York, in Cayman, in Jamaica, in Scotland, in Manchester, England, in Costa Rica, where we have people who have been to our festivals, we were telling the same stories every Sunday at 2 o'clock on Facebook.
Wow. Oh, that's beautiful. You have like the real storytelling voice there.
She does.
She's just pulling us in and in. You too, Sophie, but I could listen to you all night, like I said. So Sophie, tell us what you would want viewers to know about storytelling and you and, the Caribbean Edge kids, what you would like to do with everything you're doing with storytelling.
Well, I would like the listeners to realize, as Dr. Amina Meeks is saying, the importance of story. And I keep impressing upon those watching on Sundays to continue to tell your children stories. And again, talk to them about your personal story too. Unlike your case, Dawn, when you never got a chance to hear the story that affected your life, the other story. So I would encourage everyone to ensure that you tell the stories of your life, and as well as read the stories to your children at night. Because listen, there are times we talked about technology, and technology is advancing the cause now. But in my time, there was no technology, sweetheart. The stories were told to us in a circle. We sat around our mother. It's three of us, and she considered us a dozen, because when the noise started, it sounded like a lot of children. And sometimes when it got to our head, I remember she says, "Simone, go sleep." And it's three of us. But she would tell us the stories because it just sounded like plenty, and it's three. So anyway, so you don't need to rely on technology to tell the stories. There are times here in South Florida, Dr. Amina Meeks, you may know this from down in Jamaica too, when we have hurricane power gone. So when the power gone, what we're gonna do? We can grab a book and tell a story, or tell it from our head to pull back those days, bring the story right there and use it as a unifier, use it as an entertaining tool. So your kids don't have to be bored. They're there and technology broke down, call them. Because in the days before my time, it was moonshine that they sat under and told stories. The light of the moon. And they also told dopey stories, which here we call them thrillers, right? Who? They're thrillers. We had thrillers too. So dopey stories. And of course, we had the more bratish ones, like big boy stories and all that. So stories were in many forms. And yes, I encourage the listeners, encourage those who are with us on Sundays to teach, to tell your children stories and read the stories. Collect the books. And if you don't want to buy them, Dr. Amina Meeks doesn't like to have the download. She likes the hard book in her hand.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And a cup of boiling coffee.
Yes, you want the hard book. But the technology, you can download it on iPad or whatever it is and read the stories to your children. It is one of the easiest forms of getting them. And you should see their little eyes. You see that, Dr. Amina Meeks, when the little eyes, because they're all waiting on the end of what's going to happen next.
Yes.
What's next? So
may I say this, Dawn, that many parents listening to us might say, but I'm never able to tell a story like that. You see, if 1 million of us take the same story, it's going to be told in 1 million different ways.
Yes.
And children don't care whether you're a good actress or not. They don't care. What they care about is the sincerity of your spirit.
Yes.
They feel that you really want to share something with them. You can make it up. Put them in the story. It's never wrong. So don't feel you have to come and be a big actress to tell a story. In fact, the people that we collect stories from are not big actresses. But when them don't tell you a story, you know, Laura Tanner collected her book of stories from Jamaicans around the countryside. It's an anthology, which I think she did for Jamaica 21. Not sure about that now, but you can Google it. Let me tell you something. Every time, so it's the stories and the DVDs and the CDs. Every time I listen to this story, may I roll over, you know, for you have some Jamaicans who telling Laura a story. You see if the dog pass, them just stop and say, but what is the matter with that dog? Yes, as I was saying.
Yes, exactly. Same story now one. Yes, very animated.
When Miss Adina Henry I tell her the story, you know, she a cook and she say, excuse me, make her blow the fire. And she come right back to the story. And that's what the children want. The sincerity and the humanity of the moment. And they connect with you. And when they connect with you, the next time them buck up Amina and Sophia, hear them. My mother tell me that story.
Yes.
Because we would be surprised at the power of that emotional connection, that psychological well-being that my mother first tell me the story where this lady up on stage I tell her go on like say she's all that.
Isn't that with pride? My daughter says that with pride, and she remembers the stories. And I told Dawn she appeared to be a hard learner. I wasn't sure she'd ever read, and I'd try and I'd do things. And she remembered. She said, "Mother, you made learning fun." So in telling the stories and pulling her in, and then she went to kindergarten and she saw people reading, and she said, "I'm going to do that too." So she got swamped in. So it is good. And I tell my young mothers, read to the children, because what you're doing is forming memories. We talked about that before. And I said, go make memories with your children. If it's one thing they can say is, I remember when my mother, it is such a wonderful thing to hear that. Because Dawn would love to say that. Today, she would love to say, I remembered when my dad. But here it is, she's living it through us now, vicariously through us. But Dawn, I will be the mother and the father with the story for
and
you.
she can find some little old man and talk to them. Really and truly, Dawn, I never knew any grandparents. My grandparents died before I was born. But there are few people who believe that, because most of my friends are 30 and 40 years older than me. Them are my grandparents.
Adopt them.
Let me talk to them.
Yes.
Yeah, but listening to you too, I like the hardcover books too, and I will be getting them. And I'm going to pull my kids when Jade gets back from New York, my son, they're 20 and 25, but we're going to sit down and I'm going to tell them some Anansi stories.
Yes.
Because I want them to experience that and to say, my mom told me. So any viewers watching, it's never too late, because I'm going to rope in my grown kids and tell them some Anansi stories, just because I'm living this experience with you both and through the Caribbean Edge Kids show as well. So Dr. Amina, is anything we have not covered with you that you'd want to say tonight before we go?
One of my projects is to place Anansi and the stories in the center of the reparation objective. We learn all kinds of negative things about Anansi, you know. And when we come to dig up this story of Anansi, we find that the Europeans did a very bad PR job on Anansi. Every culture has a trickster hero in their folklore.
Yes.
Every culture, whether it's Jack and the Beanstalk, the Jack Tales, or the Fox, or Brer Rabbit, or the Green Giant, or Loki. Every culture has a trickster hero. I haven't come across any other culture but Black people culture, Jamaican culture, where Anansi is a bad person.
Yes.
When you do something bad, hear them, you don't be no Anansi pan me.
Yes.
It's like saying, don't wear your hair so pan me. Yeah. Don't come and wear this kind of clothes pan me. And don't come and talk this kind of way pan me. And then we have to say, but why is that so? When we look at many Anansi stories, we find Anansi have a wife and children, and that they always work together as a team. But if you're bringing my folklore with me, in which the central figure has a family and a wife, and they're working together as a team, but you sell me mother gone so, and you sell me father gone so, and my brother gone so, then how could you allow me really and truly to keep this hero as the center of my folklore? You have to go see all kind of bad things about him. So the image of Anansi needs to be repaired. Does Anansi sometimes do things that make we feel a little embarrassed? Yes, absolutely. But when you look at the Ghanaian culture and the cultures in which Anansi is, they will tell you that as soon as Anansi does something wrong, the children start laughing because they have learned that wrongdoing is going to be punished. The values are different.
Consequences.
Now applaud it. And then Rex Nettleford would have told us, Rex Nettleford, Orlando Pattison, Miriam Stewart, many people before me who have looked at the image of Anansi, with which I concur. Rex would have said, when we cross the Atlantic, we buck up on a crooked system, and we had to devise crooked ways to overcome that system. And so we place Anansi dead center of using him head to get out of that system. What we need to do now is the reparation on self. That sometimes we have so internalized the Western image of Anansi that we trick ourselves. We don't realize that we are do bad things to ourselves. And so when I say I place Nancy center of the reparation movement, that's part of what I mean. That how we understand Nancy is part of the emancipation from mental slavery. When Nancy always looking for food and we say, lad in Cravney, that's not how he's seen amongst the Ashanti people, you know, because food isn't always literal food. 9 out of 10 times, food is spiritual food and self-replenishment. And so I have learned to read the Nancy stories at a deeper level. And that's what I would like to say, given this international opportunity that you have presented me with, that I know every kintita laugh. And sometimes we need to look at how we have been made to laugh at our own condemnation. And to look how them laugh after Marcus Garvey and say what that him have on. But them same one come and clap Michael Jackson.
Yes.
Who was no less pageantry than Marcus Garvey. And so we need to look at the deeper meanings of who we are and not be intimidated by the Western lens through which we have been viewed.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Amina Meeks. Wow. We do have to do that. Absolutely. And we are so honored to have had you on tonight. We hope that you will join us on the Caribbean Edge Kids along with Auntie Sophie to share some of your stories with the children that join us as well. Your knowledge is powerful beyond measure. You sharing it with us so freely. I mean, we're absolutely honored to have you. So thank you for your time this evening.
But I want to return that honor to you through an encounter I had with some Senegalese who shared it with me. I was at a festival, and the festival scattered all over the country. And a Senegalese performer said to me, I want you to see this show. And I said, all right then. And him went come for me. And him come for me. And him and him friend them treat me like a queen. And I was overwhelmed, literally to tears. And me now I go on like Frightened Friday. I go say the big thank you. And he said, stop. He said, in my country, if somebody gets on the bus and doesn't have bus fare, somebody on the bus is by tradition duty bound to pay the bus fare. When that person has paid the bus fare, somebody will say, what a good person to have paid the bus fare. And then somebody has to say, what a better person to have deserved it. So there is no way we could have honored you before you honored us. It's a reciprocal thing in which we say we're all in this together. I do for you, you do for me.
Yes. One and my mother said, yes.
Thank you. Auntie Sophie, what do you have to say to me? First of all, thank all the viewers that have tuned in and that have stayed with us and that will share this episode as well. We so appreciate you. Thanks everyone that's saying hello, saying thank you, you're an amazing storyteller. Nothing beats an actual book. So good. Paula Haas says this show has brought back happy memories and some sadness as I cannot remember due to chemo brain, some in their entirety. I plan to Google them in the coming weeks. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for that, Paula, because that definitely means a lot. Paula is my best friend and she has cancer. So she's very grateful to have listened to you both tonight and everyone else that has tuned in. So many names here. Thank you guys. We appreciate you and I'll respond to you all. Auntie Sophie, what would you like the viewers to know as we end and wrap up tonight's show?
I am wrapping up Auntie Dawn, and I just love when Dr. Amina Meeks talks and she takes me back and she gives me that cultural expression with the language of our people, which we call back then the dialect, now formally called the patois, which you were forbidden to speak. I have to interject, I have to throw this in here. God rest your father's soul. I thought he was alive because I was preparing to trace him tonight because he never wanted you to speak the patois. But since he is not here, I'm going to trace a family member who also forbid you to speak the patois. And I'm closing with a piece from Miss Lou. It's called Bands of Killing, because you know they wanted to kill the patois back in the day. So I'd look at the person and I'd say, so you are the man me hear about. Are you them say I take whole heap of English out so that you're going to kill dialect? Make me get it straight, Master Charlie, for me not quite understand. You're going to kill all English dialect or just Jamaica one. For if you're that equal up with English language, then what make? You're going to feel inferior when it comes to dialect. If you can't sing the water come on my eye, you will have to stop sing Old Land Sign and Coming Through the Rye. That the language where you're proud of, where you honor and respect. Poor Master Charlie, you never know so that it spring from dialect. That them start turn language from the 14th century, 500 years gone, and then got more dialect than we. You have to kill the Lancashire, the Yorkshire, the Cockney, the Broad Scotch, and the Irish broad before you start kill me. You will have to take that Oxford Book of English verse and tear out Chaucer, Lady Grizzel, and plenty of Shakespeare. And Master Charlie, when you're done kill with time humor, when you kill originality, you have to find a way to kill variety. And Master Charlie, I know you that read them English book upon your shelf, but if you drop a H, you might have to kill yourself. Aye, aye, aye. That was Miss Lou for you. So tell every one of them the language there.
Thank you so much for that. You can still cuss my father.
Him now hold back for your language.
So for the viewers that don't know that, it's my dad, growing up in Jamaica, he always wanted you to speak the Queen's English. So we weren't really allowed to speak patois in the house. And it's so funny now because all the Caribbean Edge kids were having this patois competition where I'm encouraging kids, especially living overseas, to join us to speak patois, because I think it's so beautiful and it's so natural for us to speak like Jamaicans.
Absolutely. Because the work has been done, Dawn. Patois is a mixture, is a broken up thing, as Miss Lou herself said.
Right.
The work has been done that has established the way we speak as a language with its grammar and syntax and so on. We're not talking no patois, we're speaking Jamaican language.
Exactly. And my brother, we would say in Jamaica, he spoke so badly because my grandmother used to say to him, how you can chat so bad through a live stream, boy?
I'm sure talk.
And many people chat very bad English and don't realize it's bad English them chatting, and many people chat bad Jamaican and don't realize it's bad. So you can speak
in the same household, so it's a beautiful dialect, and I love it, and can't wait to share it with the kids and the rest of the world that doesn't speak patois, and so they can connect with us and our Caribbean rich culture. So thank you both very, very much.
Thank you both so much.
And
walk good.
Walk good.
Thank you, Dawn.
Way and good up you walk.
Walk with you.
Walk good every day and good up you
walk with you.
Every day on your way. Walk good, good follow you. If you just walk good, walk
good.
If you just
walk good.
Walk good on your way and good up you walk.
All right. Good night.
Tuning into the Caribbean Edge. Good night, beautiful ladies. Love you both.
Love you.
All the best. Night. With the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Miss Amina.
Bye for now.